Hey guys, so we're now done with our transformations, and this is part one of the notes. So there's a part two that we're going to use all the stuff we do in part one to help us determine part two and what to do in part two. So it's going to be good. It's going to be very, very good here. All right, so you've already written down all the parent functions that are important for this class. All the parent functions and their graphs, domain and range, all the good stuff for these the functions that are important for this class. Now, all the transformations we're about to work on, that we're about to cover, that we're about to endeavor into, every single one of those transformations works for every single one of those parent functions. So every one of those functions that you guys did, these transformations will work for them. So here, we're going to take a look at our transformations, and we're going to look at them piece by piece by piece, and then at the end, we're going to put everything together. All right, so here, our first thing is we're going to have our general form. So all of our functions are transformed by using this form here. So it either has to do with the number in front, the number inside, or a number in the back. So we're going to do this piece by piece, but we're going to actually start kind of backwards. So we're going to start back here with our C. That's what we're going to start with in a few minutes. But before we do that, we're going to say here, each letter represents a different constant and a different transformation. So C does one thing, B does another thing, A does another thing. So all these are going to do different transformations, but it's going to be still cool because we're going to be able to get this and it's going to be easy. All right, so again, let's start with C. And C, I'm going to use this color. Let's start with C. Now, C is normally at the back of the function. Normally. Sometimes, like, mathematicians like to change things around so you don't get so, like, used to it being one way and not like be able to adjust to other ways and other stuff. But normally you will see C's at the back of the function. So if you look at the general form back up top, C is right back here at the back. So it's normally going to be back there all the time. But then there's those few times so we might change it and move it. Now C moves the graph up or down. So it moves the graph up or down, depending on what type of C it is, if it's positive or negative. So it moves it up or moves it down. Now with this, that means when we do this, we're not going to just move one point and that's it. The whole thing is going to have to move. So the whole graph is going to have to go up or go down. Same thing happens when it comes to the moving it left or right. The whole graph is going to move left, the whole graph is going to move right. So here I'm going to write this out real quick. Put the color in here. The colors, Duke, the colors. All right, so we're going to move the whole thing up and move the whole thing down. All right, but then let's find out like what we do for up and down. All right, so here, if C is positive, so we have a positive C, it moves up. If we have a negative C, the whole thing moves down. Every point just moves down. So when we do this and we're talking about it, the function's either going to move up or it's going to go down, all depending on what number is right here. All depends on what number is right there. If it's positive, it goes up. If it's negative, it goes down. Okay, so let's now go into an example where we're going to not only like talk about transformations, talk about the parent functions, but also talk about graphing. So here, for example 1, we're going to tell the parent graph, we're going to list the transformations, and then we're going to graph this function right here. So our function that we have is h of x equals x squared plus 3. And with it, from your parent graphs that you wrote down, all those parent graphs that are relevant for this class, they're important for this class, we know from that x squared means quadratic. 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 Okay. Then here we have a plus 3. Okay, that's on the back of it. So that's C. So that means it's going to either move it up or move it down. And since it's positive, it's going to move up. So our transformation moves up 3. Easy, simple, not hard. We got this. All right, so we got a transformation. We actually found a parent graph, parent function, which is quadratic. We list the transformations, which goes up 3. Now let's graph it. All right, so these are the steps we're going to use. And when you look at this and you notice it, we're going to use these steps every time. So we're going to start with step 1, step 2. We're going to add a step 3 and a step 4. But step 1 and 2 is going to be the exact same thing every single time. All right, so for graphing, our step 1 right here says we're going to graph the parent graph, but we're going to use a dotted line for it. So before we do that, make sure we label our graph. We must label it. If you don't label it, it'll be counted wrong because we don't know if you I don't know if you moved it in the right spot or if it's been moved correctly, like what's been going on. We just don't know. So here, before we actually do label it, here 3 is the highest number that we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to make 3 go, we're going to go 3 in every direction. Go 3 in all directions. Make sure we label. And so with that, you should be able to say that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Here we're good. All right, so we labeled it. So now let's go ahead and do our parabola. Quadratic functions have parabolas in it. So here, we're going to do our U-shaped graph, parabola. All right, so we got that going. All right, here it says we're going to move up 3. So it means you need to go up 1, 2, 3. Put that dot right there. And we have the parabola. And there's no other graphs to be done or no other functions, no other transformations to be done. All right, and then we just did this step 2 right there. That's what we just completed. And so one thing to understand as we're going through this, we always use the graph right before it to help to make that next transformation. So here we use the green graph or the parent graph here to help us to do step 2. So as we keep going through it, we'll do step 1. We'll use that graph to do step 2. We'll use step 2's graph to do step 3. The step 3's graph to do step 4. Okay. All right, so then let's go into part B here. Oh, right there, part B. All right, so we have this graph. Bring it up some, there we go. All right, so this time we have a 3 right here. And again, if you look back at your notes we say it's the types of functions. This would be a cubic one. So we look, what you would do is actually ask yourself, okay, which function has an x cubed in it? And you look through all the functions that you have, and you're like, oh, that's cubic. So again, you ask yourself, okay, what has a cube in it? What function has a cube in it? Look through all your functions, and you see one that has a cube in it. You look at that name of that function, and it's cubic. Oh. So I promise you it's not hard. That's how we're going to use those notes from parent functions. All right, so this again is C. It's negative. So we said if it's a negative C, it goes down. And we move down 4. If you want to put the arrows there too, instead of actually writing the word down or writing the word up, you can do the arrows. That's fine. So really quick again, negative c moves the function down. So that's what we did, moved it down. All right, so then let's go ahead and graph it again. All right, so here we're going to graph it out, and it says graph the parent graph with the dotted line. All right, so here again, 4 is going to be the biggest number, so I'm going to do 4 in all 4 directions. I'm going to label. All right, so we have that. We're going to do the cubic graph. All right, so that's our cubic graph there, like almost like a snake or something. All right, so again, step 1 is to graph out the parent graph, and then step 2 is to actually move the graph up or down. And in this case, we're going to move it down because it's a 4. It's a negative 4, so we go down. So we take each one of these and we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. And here we're going to put a dot, and then we'll graph you out. And graph them out, and graph them out, and graph them out, and graph them out. All right, so that is our vertical shift. That is dealing with our C. So guys, that's it. That's the first one. And so now let's go ahead and move into part B. The letter B, sorry.